Hello, hello. Today it is the rest of season fantasy rankings. I'm usually not a huge rankings person, but the people wanted it, and I actually kind of had fun doing it. So, going over what we have all listed here for every position, it's going to be the rank on the left, obviously, the 2024 points per game rank so far through 8 weeks, where they are currently, the 2024 volume rank, the regular season schedule adjusted to the matchups and just for the position. So, it's not like the Eagles team schedule, strength of schedule, but just for quarterbacks in terms of fantasy. It's adjusted, and it's also just week 9 to week 14. So basically, if you just need to make the playoffs, you're not really focused on maybe winning it all right now. You just got to get there. Maybe focus on that one a little bit more than the playoff schedule, week 15 to 17. If you're in a 14 playoff, I'll have more stuff on TikTok later for the specific matchups, but maybe just look up which ones you're actually not going to have and how that would change it. But it's week 15, 16, and 17 for the playoff schedule. And number one for quarterbacks is going to be Jalen Hurts for me. It is very, very close for 1 and 2. They're basically the same. But in terms of Hurts, the floor is just so ridiculously high because of the weapons, the rushing, and Kellen Moore. He's got everything. The number one strength of schedule in terms of the rest of the season. So he's set up perfectly. The rushing touchdowns obviously help him a ton, rushing overall. There isn't really much risk going forward when it comes to Jalen Hurts. So incredible there. 2 is Lamar. Like I said, very, very close. Him and Jaden, same type of thing, like 2 and 3. The rushing makes them those top 3 guys. Barely have Hurts ahead. They're basically kind of all the same up there. Number 4, Josh Allen, the guy that has been top 2 in 4 straight seasons. I've said it before, 4 straight seasons of being either quarterback 1 or quarterback 2. No one else has been a top 2 guy twice in those 4 years. Like the other guy was like Mahomes, Hurts, I forget the other 2. But no one's done it more than twice, and he's done it 4 straight times. The reason I don't have him in my top 2 anymore is because the volume right here. You look, he's 15th in total volume right now. The passing volume is pretty low. The rushing volume, especially in the red zone or just on the goal line, going more to Cook this year. So good for him. For Josh Allen, a little worse. And just the weapons, it's different. He doesn't have the weapons that he used to have. Amari Cooper obviously helps. It's kind of why I have him at 4 here, but also really hard schedule. The volume isn't incredible. He's only been the quarterback 5 so far, so I kind of have him right at that level still at quarterback 4 for the rest of the season. Baker at quarterback 5. I would have never thought this at the start of the season. He has been incredible. And a few weeks ago, the one thing was he was like the quarterback 3, but his volume was super low. Since then, he has led the NFL in volume. Like his volume has been incredible, all the way up to quarterback 6 now in volume. Yes, no, Godwin definitely hurts. Godwin leads the NFL in yards after catch. Him and Baker are actually number 1 in the NFL in terms of a duo in EPA per play, if you like those deeper analytic stuff. So super efficient, but now the volume is still getting up there. Mike Evans will be back. Right now, the biggest thing is he is rushing 2 times more than any other season he's ever had, which I don't think people like fully realize. Like I think people see him as like, oh yeah, like he's running. He's rushing 2 times more than ever. So the rushing helps him a ton of passing volume, had 50 attempts last week and a great schedule going forward. So still like him as a top 5 guy going forward. I have in my Dynasty Superflex League, which I'm stoked about, is looking at this now. Joe Burrow, my second quarterback in that Dynasty Superflex League, as my number 6 guy. The biggest thing for him is just that they are so pass heavy. Like every single week, whether you go week 1 to 4, week 5 to 8, all season, every 2 weeks, like no matter what you look at, the Bengals are number 1 in pass rate over the expected. They're going to be throwing. He's playing at an MVP level, but he's just on a trash team. So in terms of fantasy, it kind of helps him just because that's not really going to stop. He's got the weapons. So the volume is solid. The efficiency, really good. Playoff schedule, really, really tough. But up until that, still great. Even playoff schedule, like you're still starting. Should be fine there. But he's number 6. Honestly, after like those first 4 guys, it is a massive drop off. Like love Baker, but even Josh Allen to Baker is a big drop off. Looking at this, like before I did this, I just kind of assumed that there'd be more good quarterbacks. And I think out of all the positions, quarterback is the one that I'm most confident in terms of my rankings and just like opinion on guys, what I definitely study the most. And this is where it kind of gets confusing. Where like Kyler, I don't know, not as perfect as I would hope, But in terms of compared to everyone else, like I have him as my quarterback 7 right now. The big thing for Kyler is his rushing has been extremely low. Like he's not even top 10 in rushing volume right now among quarterbacks. And you would think he's like, oh, top 5 lock, Kyler Murray in terms of rushing. He's had the massive running plays, which has saved him right now. But in terms of rushing volume, he really hasn't been running that much, and they are really low passing volume. So the efficiency has been incredible. He has been a great NFL quarterback. McBride and Marv definitely help. But in terms of overall volume, like right now he's 19th. Yeah, I think that'll increase a little bit. But in terms of the volume going forward, I think it's not going to get all the way up into the top 10. And that really lowers his ceiling. So I think he is one of those higher floor, lower ceiling type of guys at my quarterback 7 right now. Geno, kind of the opposite. And Stroud, similar. I'll talk about both of them together. Stroud is last year, and I'll talk about his receivers, same thing, was way above his volume last year because how efficient he was in terms of the passing game. This year hasn't been the same. His matchups so far have been really hard. So I think eventually we'll get above this quarterback 13. That's kind of why I'm at quarterback 9. Is his volume is quarterback 13. I'd expect him to be right above that going forward. Just hasn't been there. Diggs being out obviously hurts. Nico coming back helps. I think Tank Dell will start being better. And then Geno hasn't been super efficient with his volume, but he's the quarterback 2 in terms of volume. I think that gets better. He's had some plays called back, usually to DK Metcalf, where it's kind of hurt him that way. But I think going forward, it'll be better for both Geno and CJ Stroud. Brock Purdy, the big thing for him, honestly, if you want to put Brock Purdy at 8 or 7, I don't mind it. The thing is, his volume is the best it has ever been, not even close. Basically every year, and I know CMC's been out, so remember that. Basically every year, though, he's been bottom 5 in volume in quarterback. Insanely efficient, but bottom 5 in quarterback volume. Right now, he's quarterback 10. CMC, I think it's more neutral because it helps the offense a ton, gives them another receiving weapon, especially with no Ayuk there. But obviously, they're going to run a little bit more. But still, I think his volume is going to be better than 28, like it's always been. He's quarterback 10 right now. Been solid in terms of efficiency. Obviously, you see here 32nd in playoff schedule. That doesn't help. But overall, would you guess Lamar Jackson is not second in scrambles in the NFL? Jaden Daniels is number 1. Brock Purdy is number 2. Since when? I don't know. I've been watching a couple of his games. I know I've seen him scramble, but second in the NFL in scrambles right now, that's a good thing when it comes to fantasy. Dak Prescott, he had dominated in the second half of last year, and that's like kind of where the hope lies. At the same time, he doesn't have the weapons he had last year. And in terms of rushing, he is not running at all. At all. It was kind of why I was out on him at the start of last year, because his first few years he ran a ton, and then the last couple years he ran less and less, and then last year kind of even less than that. This year, not even close. He has the same rushing volume as Kirk Cousins and Aaron Rodgers, like 40-year-olds coming off of Achilles tears. He's running at that rate in terms of his volume. So he used to be a guy that could get you 3-4 rushing fantasy points per game. Right now, it's like 1. So that's the tough thing with Dak right now, is his passing volume is amazing. They don't have running backs. Their defense isn't incredible anymore. So that helps him. I still have hope that he can be solid. As you see, I have him at quarterback 11. But in terms of his ceiling, I don't think it's going to be, second half of the year, quarterback 1 in points per game like he was in 2023. The next 2 guys are guys that have very low floors, pretty high ceilings for different reasons. Bo Nix, the rushing has been great. At the same time, bad offense and a rookie quarterback. It's shaky sometimes, hard to trust, but a lot of his boom weeks. Jared Goff, incredible offense. That's what helps. If he's the reason they're scoring a bunch, then he's going to score his 25 points. At the same time, last week he had 80 passing yards. He got really lucky that he did get those 3 passing touchdowns, but every single week, someone outside of Jared Goff is throwing a touchdown too. So that doesn't help him. Everything is just really inconsistent in terms of starting Jared Goff, and it's tough to know when. So he's good. He's quarterback 12 for me, I think. Yep. But do I want him as my quarterback 1? Not necessarily. The next guy, Sam Darnold, kind of similar to Goff. Again, both great schedules going forward, great efficiency, volume, pretty low. And the big thing for the Vikings is their script offense has been incredible. Those first 15 plays to talk about, number one in the NFL in terms of offense, the first drive. After that, they're bottom 10. That's tough, especially when we're just talking consistency in fantasy, and especially when it is in those games where it's like a shootout and you want those fantasy points. Maybe the offense isn't as great as it is at the start of games, but he's got the weapons, so that helps. Williams, I could easily see him higher than this. The volume has been great. I hate the play calling, but rushing and with the chemistry with his weapons, if it continues to be on the right track, he could be big this end of season. Not the greatest schedule, at least up until the playoffs, but it's not bad. I think he has better days ahead. It just might take a while to be consistent, but we'll see. It's a guy that I do have somewhat a decent confidence in. Jordan Love, injured right now. It's weird. He's had a couple different injuries. It's a really hard schedule. The volume really isn't there. So he's been great when he's played. It's one of those where it's tough to count on, especially with the injuries. And the Packers just, I don't know. It's a weird team. Justin Herbert, a guy that is very, very interesting going forward because the volume has been substantially better these last 3 weeks specifically. The thing that hurts him the most is they have the number one defense in the NFL right now in terms of scoring. Obviously, the weapons aren't that great, and they're still running a decent bit. But if he has the volume he's had these last 3 weeks, then he's a great streaming quarterback, matchup-dependent guy, super flex guy, but he just isn't that quarterback one that you want to be starting every single week. But solid. Drake May, another guy that I could have way higher. He's going to be back, obviously, from injury pretty soon, if it's just concussion-type stuff. And the rushing is there. Massive weekly ceiling. Similar to Nick's, except better rushing and deep ball threat than Nick's, at least as a talent. The thing is, his offensive line is horrible. The weapons are garbage, so it's really tough that way. I love him as a quarterback in fantasy if he's on a different team. Still love him, but that's why I have him at 18th and not higher than that. Is high ceiling, more of an unknown though. Trevor Lawrence and Patrick Mahomes. I don't see things changing too much because the play style for Mahomes more and the play calling for Trevor Lawrence more. The volume isn't great, especially Patrick Mahomes. This doesn't fully take into account how low his average at the target is and is not throwing deep. Trevor actually does throw deep a lot more, so their volume is probably closer than the 20 to 11 right here. It's one of those things where it's like, are they ever going to be quarterback one consistently? I don't think so, and that's why I have them slower, like lower than, say, a Drake May, because if you were to tell me, like, oh, one of those three guys is going to be a quarterback, top 5 quarterback, rest of season, who's it going to be? I would put the money on Drake May. If you're saying quarterback 1 or top 15, yeah, then maybe I would take Mahomes or Lawrence, but top 5 guy, that's what we're kind of hoping for more, especially when we're talking quarterbacks. The rest of the guys here, tougher. Guys like Kirk Cousins, Tua, they don't run at all, so it's really hard to get a consistent ceiling. Fine streams, fine against certain matchups, but both of them, going forward, have really hard matchups. So less of that for the rest of the season. Receivers are the guys this year that are just super injured. We are blessed this season, especially talking week 9, to have this level of running back talent healthy and performing in fantasy. So top 12, 13 guys, I would say, are incredible. Amazing. If you have multiple of these guys, you're going to be set up very well. The top 2, definitely interchangeable, even 3. I'll talk about that in a second. But I have Saquon as my number 1. He has an incredible schedule going forward. Great volume, great offensive line, great offense. Everything like people would talk about, Jalen Hurts tush push. I'll say the same exact thing that I said at the start of the year. It's only going to happen on the 1-yard line. Swift was top 10 in goal line attempts last year. Saquon was like dead last in terms of compared to all the other starting running backs. And now he's up there, top 10 in goal line attempts. Yes, Hurts gets them, but they're down at the 1 yard or down inside the 5, 10 times more than a lot of other teams. So Saquon's still amazing. He had 3 touchdowns week 1. Stuff like that will happen again. His touchdowns are still amazing. So no, I'm not worried about Jalen Hurts taking those touchdowns because he's still going to be fine. It's like saying you're worried about Achane because Mostert's taking touchdowns. He's still the overall RB1 with Tua. And that's why I love him. If he is healthy and Tua is healthy, you like guarantee those 2 things. Guarantee it for like everybody. say everyone stays healthy, everyone's quarterback stay healthy, I would say Achane will be my overall RB1. Henry, obviously super close. They're basically tied. Harder schedule, especially compared to the start of his season. He is definitely matchup proof, but there is a difference between being matchup proof and matchup like it doesn't affect anything. Like if you have CJ Stroud, it's not like it's the exact same if he's going against Jacksonville compared to the Broncos. Like, yes, he can still do good against the Broncos, but it doesn't mean that you still like, oh, it doesn't matter. I would take him against either one. He's going to score the same amount of points. Like, no, it still affects things. So that's why he's my 2 by a hair. Number 4, Kenneth Walker. The one negative is he scores a lot of touchdowns. And I say that as both a good thing and a bad thing. Obviously, facetious. But in terms of touchdowns per attempt, he is number 1 in the NFL. So the regression will probably come a little bit there. Monty is second, and his touchdowns per attempt is because so many of his carries are inside that 5-yard line. So Walker definitely gets all that goal line work. His touchdowns are still going to be there, but I probably won't be as insane. The big thing for him of why he's still RB4 for me is the receiving. He's an incredible talent. He's atop of everything in terms of the analytics, stats. You just watch the film, obviously, too. He looks amazing as a running back. But the negative, that, and then the really bad offensive line. So the receiving is what is saving him. Just being a top 5 guy in running back targets is so huge for him. Really interchangeable with Gibbs. Really close to putting Gibbs above him. I love Gibbs. Similar. Really good offense, really good receiving. But the offense of line, offense of team, and his skill is basically unmatched. Obviously, Monty is there, but his volume has been increasing and Monty's has been decreasing. So still like Monty, but in terms of like he's RB17 in volume right now, that's completely fine for how efficient he is and in the offense that he's in, and that is only increasing. So I could put him higher and be completely fine with that. Breece Hall, similar. Walker, really bad offensive line, really good receiving. I would have him higher if the Jets were 6-2 instead of being 2-6. It's really hard. Just that's the big worry for all these Jets guys is they're 2-6. So there's worry about him, but the volume, amazing, incredible schedule, obviously super talented. He's top 3 in really everything that matters. So love him still. RB11 right now, and I think he's going to go up compared to down. Bijan, if you took out the blowouts in the games where he was limited, his volume, instead of being top 12, would be closer to top 3, top 5 at least. So the offense is being put together, it's improving, meshing. The receiving is actually being better over these last few weeks for Bijan. More carries in general. So I really like him going forward. Again, similar to Breece Hall, he's RB9 right now. I would say that he's going to be better than RB9 rest of the season compared to worse. Obviously saying that when I'm putting him at RB7. Kyron Williams, RB6. I originally had him a little bit higher. Amazing schedule, amazing volume. The big thing is he is pretty highly affected by Puka and Cup. So his touchdowns will definitely be there. The offense will be better. But in terms of volume, it definitely is different. The receiving is basically nothing when both of those guys are playing. So that makes it a little bit tougher when he doesn't have a game where he scores a touchdown. So he's more similar to like a better version of Monty is what I would compare him to the rest of the season if the receivers stay healthy. Joe Mixon, RB1 right now, RB2 in volume. The reason I have him a little bit lower is, yes, amazing production so far, obviously, incredible volume. However, it is a small sample size. It's only 5 games, and it's been an extremely easy schedule. Like, he's played the Colts twice in those 5 games. And the one hard matchup he had was against the Bears, and he did really bad. So that's kind of the thing for me is it's not going to be the perfect schedule going forward. The playoff schedule is really hard for him. RB1 rest of the way. Overall RB1, not as much. A guy that is really interesting here. At RB10, I have Alvin Kamara. There's a lot to talk about with him because, yes, he's the RB1 in volume. He's the RB4 overall. But there are a lot of red flags. Out of these top 11 guys, I would say are pretty safe. And Kamara's still to that level. But if anyone out of that 11 were to bust, I would probably say he's the most likely. The Saints have lost 6 straight games. He's a 29-year-old running back. with Kendra Miller now back. And last year, it was very similar. Kind of the same at this point of the year. He was dominating, number 2 in touches through like week 13 or 12. And then those last 5 games, he was 27th. And he kind of fell off in a pretty substantial way. So that's the worry for Alvin Kamara. JT, more weekly boom bust guy still. He's kind of that one guy that could survive with Richardson back. He's still fine there. Better with Flacco. The receiving isn't there, but touchdowns, offensive line certainly helps. All of that keeps him right there. But those 11 are the ones that I have above Christian McCaffrey. And the reason for it is because Christian McCaffrey, he could be nothing this year. Like, that's the truth. He could just be safe for the playoffs, not fully come back healthy, get re-injured, whatever it is. But say he's completely healthy right away and they play him and get him all that volume, then he's probably the RB1. The 11 guys above him on the rankings, and you can have him much higher, completely fine with that. I just put him here because those 11 guys, I think, would be somewhat close to a good CMC, where it's not the worst thing in the world if, say, you took Jonathan Taylor over CMC. CMC ceiling, yeah, way better, but Jonathan Taylor at least probably won't be scoring 10 points per game like CMC maybe could in worst case scenario. So completely fine with having him completely way higher, but it's just kind of a hard guy to rank right now. Aaron Jones is the last guy in this tier, I would say. Extremely efficient all season long. Think he can keep it up. Overall, just pretty solid all around. And then with his next tier starts with DeAndre Swift. His volume has been incredible these last month or so. Overall, been really good as it's some big weeks. I think he'll be a solid RB2 going forward. Well, he's still not getting the full goal line work. The receiving, though, has definitely helped. The schedule isn't amazing. He's one of those guys where I don't have a ton of opinions on, and I kind of go back and forth on. So it's a really tough guy to rank as well. Josh Jacobs fully just depends on Jordan Love, honestly. Like, he's playable most weeks with Malik Willis. Not really this week because he plays the Lions. But most weeks with Willis, he's fine. But he's so much better with Jordan Love, especially when it comes to touchdown upside and the receiving. So that's what is tough to rank him, too, is just RB15 right now. If Jordan Love was there, he would be closer to, like, the RB12 range. James Cook is a guy where his volume is decreasing, his receiving is decreasing. There's not a bunch that I love. RB10 right now, and he's been great in terms of his rushing efficiency, and he gets the goal line work. Like talking about Josh Allen earlier, less goal line for Josh Allen, which helps James Cook a bunch, but the receiving just hasn't been there this year, and I don't think that is going to change. Ray Davis hasn't really gotten too much since James Cook came back. That's a good sign for him. But it's one of those guys where he is going to have a decent amount of weeks coming forward, I think, that he's closer to that RB28, like his volume is. But still, obviously, have him RB16. Montgomery, the worry, like I was talking about, that volume is decreasing. On a great offense, when you're scoring a touchdown a game, sometimes it doesn't really matter. I don't think he's going to be an RB1 the rest of the way, like he's the RB12 right now. I think he'll decrease a little bit, but still RB17, completely fine there. James Conner, I would maybe, there's a lot that makes me want to put James Conner higher. And maybe you hear what I'm about to say and you're like, why isn't he higher? I would think he's higher, and go for it. In your head, in your own rankings in your head, just put him higher. Because the positives for Conner, Benson hasn't been a threat. That's number one. The volume has been amazing in terms of rushing. The big thing is the receiving this year. Kyler checks down a decent bit, but James Conner just hasn't gotten that receiving work this year. So the offense is solid. The volume isn't going away. The receiving isn't amazing, but the two big things, he is the only player in the NFL that does 100% of the goal line work, and he is number one in missed tackles forced per attempt. The most efficient running back. He's always up there, but number one this year, especially at his age, is so impressive. So in terms of just like keeping that volume, his role, very safe in terms of that way. He's RB21 right now, RB23 in volume, number one playoff schedule at the end of the year. So I think he's just going to be a really solid RB2 for you. And he's safe, I think. He's safe. Pacheco, a tough guy to rank as well. I've said it like 4 times the past 5 guys, I feel like. But obviously, first 2 games of the year, he was great in terms of the stats he was putting up in that Kansas City offense. They are running the ball. When he is back, The injury guys that I trust are pretty confident that he'll be able to be okay and be that lead back in a few weeks. So that's the big thing of why I have Kareem Hunt so low and why I have Pacheco right here, RB19, is he could be huge. He's got an easy schedule to come back into. The receiving should be solid. The offense fits him really well. Really good interior offensive line. So he has RB1 ceiling. That's for sure. The injury does scare me. It is a tough one to come back to, especially as a running back. And same thing as a lot of these good teams, they're playing for the playoffs. So when you have an injured running back, if you're 9-2 going into week 12, like, are you really going to give Pacheco 25 touches? Not that he would get 25 touches, but a ton of volume. So that's a worry when it comes to Isaiah Pacheco there. These next group of guys, I'm just going to talk about Robinson to Chase Brown is kind of this next chunk where if you want to move one higher than the other, completely fine. It's weird because the offenses that they're in, the volume that they're getting, everything is just kind of shaky and odd. Like Pollard has Tajay coming back. The offense is atrocious. The big worry for him, he's RB8 in volume. Usually when I talk about volume, it's a good thing if he's RB8 in volume. The thing is, he's RB8 in volume and he's RB22 in points. Is his volume going to get better? Probably not, with the offense being worse and Tajay coming back. I don't think he's going to get much better than RB22. So that is the tough part. I do have him at RB20. I think he's going to be solid, and he's still one of those bell cow guys that's rare to have, so it's hard to like rank a bell cow guy lower than 20. Same thing with like Stevenson, RB22. Huge upside potential with May, and that's the similar thing. If May's in there and playing well, that is where Ramondre I have a bunch of hope for. Robinson, like a lot of these guys, the receiving super low. Touchdown and rushing are great. Daniels definitely opens up in terms of the efficiency for that rushing attack, similar to like Hurts and Saquon, Richardson and Taylor, all that sort of stuff. Najee, the efficiency is the best it's been in forever. The volume is just down now that Warren is back, and Arthur Smith, you can't trust it. So his rushing, he's just a lot better NFL back right now. Like, I think he's a great NFL back these last few weeks, just in terms of fantasy. Still not the most ideal. Tracy Jr., similar, just because the offense sucks. Like, he has been incredible. At the same time, the offense is horrible. They're the 31st offense in points per game, and 32nd is the Dolphins, and they're going to pass them pretty quickly. So they're basically the worst offense in the NFL. It's hard to start a running back on the worst offense in the NFL and expect him to do that great. He isn't getting a ton of passing work, despite being very capable. So that's tough to rank him. Amazing schedule for the rest of the season. That's the big positive. He's definitely getting the work over Singletary, but again, there's just obvious red flags. Javonte Williams, the volume has been up and up, receiving definitely there. Touchdown upside, not amazing. Like I said, Bo Nix getting a lot of the rushing work on the goal line. They still have McLaughlin and Estime kind of working in, but the volume's been solid. Offense, again, not the greatest. So it's one of those where it's like you're kind of hoping he's the RB2 for the rest of the season. That's what you're kind of hoping for all of these guys. So if you can like get them to be the RB16 overall for the rest of the season, you'd gladly take it. So moving on to this next group, Kareem Hunt. I'll talk about Chase real quick. The majority share, he's getting that over Moss. Clearly. The problems for Chase Brown is one, the team volume, insanely low for rushing, opposite of what I was saying with Burrow earlier. And two, he's not getting a ton of receiving, and the Bengals, for the life of them, will not design work for the running backs in terms of screens and that sort of stuff and big plays, routes out of the backfield that are kind of made to get running backs one-on-one. Like, the receiving he's getting is just last second 3-yard checkdowns, and it's like Burrow throwing to him, and he just like catches and gets tackled right away for 4 yards. So like, yeah, it's good, but like you're not really getting the big plays that we saw from Brown last year or just in general. Kareem, amazing for a few weeks probably. We'll see how it goes, but once Pacheco's back, he doesn't get receiving. He doesn't really have a role. He doesn't really have a role outside of Pacheco that like Pacheco isn't doing. So it kind of just becomes a handcuff like a lot of these guys. Dobbins, similar to Najee. No receiving, great NFL back, has been really solid so far. At the same time, matchup dependent and touchdown dependent. And the rest of the regular season, he's 32nd. So kind of makes it tough on him for that type of player. Bucky Irving, like the talent in terms of missed tackles forced per attempt. He's second to James Conner. At the same time, they're using 3 running backs there. They're passing a ton. He's not really that main receiving guy in the backfield. He gets some of that goal line work, solid schedule going forward. But in a 3 running back committee, it's tough to play a guy. Yeah, not the easiest. Chubb with Jameis. Jameis doesn't check down. Chubb doesn't really get receiving anyways. So again, insanely low floor, touchdown dependent, has hope weekly, but not the most ideal. If he is healthy, ETN could be solid with receiving. Here I've got him at RB31. The thing is just the schedule sucks and the offensive line sucks. So I still believe in ETN as a talent. And he is a great runner and receiver, just all-around player. But they do have Bigsby. They don't have an offensive line. They don't have an offense, and they don't have a good schedule. So it's really hard to put him anything above RB31 at this point. And then we got this big group of guys after him. Hubbard and Brooks. Hubbard, it's tough to start because 1, Bryce Young is there, and 2, Jonathan Brooks. He practiced fully today. Who knows what they're doing? Like, I can't trust the Panthers with anything right now and how they are using their quarterback or running backs or whatever they have. So Brooks has a massive ceiling still, but at the same time, he could not score a single fantasy point this year, and I wouldn't be shocked. So Hubbard, definitely lower. Don't think he's ever going to get back to the point that he was earlier in the season. And similar is Raheem Mostert. Behind Achane, his efficiency hasn't been the same this year. And yes, part of that was with Tua out, but still Achane way above him when you're comparing the two. And Wright, way above him. You know how much I love Wright. I'm going to say it again. I actually like Wright right now. And I know it sounds insane, and I know I've said it multiple times. At this point, he's basically in the same exact spot that he was in week 1, but now he is more proven, and we've seen it, and it's been good. He hasn't gotten the opportunity because of Tua, and he hasn't had a game with Tua and without one of the running backs. Like the games that Mostert missed was when it was Tim Boyle at quarterback. But number 1, an explosive rush percentage. One of the top guys in missed tackles forced per attempt, has looked amazing when he's on the field. Mostert hasn't really looked good. He's gotten the touchdowns, but besides the touchdowns, Mostert has not done much. So if one of those 2 guys goes in, I do really think that Wright could be a really solid guy, at least as a handcuff, especially if you have room, especially for a winning team and you don't really need a guy that needs to score right now. I would consider picking him up again. But Mostert, don't love going forward for that similar reason. A lot of these guys, solid handcuffs. Jaylen Warren, basically a handcuff right now. Zach Charbonnet, still amazing handcuff. Bigsby, still solid in that way. But yeah, Warren is basically just the same as Najee, just even lower volume. But a lot of these guys, they have potential, but not really going to be used anytime soon. Okay, top 5 receivers. We got Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, CD, AJ Brown, and Tyreek Hill. And really this top 10 or top 11 guys. Nico, Puka, Malik Neighbors, Debo, Cooper Kupp, DK Metcalf. I'm all pretty confident in. I love those top 11 guys, especially healthy for the most part. So Justin Jefferson, I doubted him at the start of the season, not because of him, but because of Sam Darnold. But Kevin O'Connell works wonders. Talked about the script earlier. That's a little bit of a downgrade. But in terms of Darnold, like he still can support him fully. And Jefferson has yet to have a game under 15 points. So he's my number 1 guy the rest of the year. Jamar, similar to what I was talking about Joe Burrow earlier. All those same reasons. T banged up. He's always banged up. So obviously that's from there. The volume is oddly low. But 1, he's still wide receiver 3. And 2, the volume is not going to get worse. Like, I don't think so. I said it before multiple times, but like these last 2 years with Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase has led the NFL in targets per game. It's still a smaller sample size. He's going to be fine in volume. It's not like he's 60th in volume. He's 27th. So I think he's going to be perfectly fine there. And he's still the wide receiver 3 on that lower volume. CD, not much has changed. It hasn't been as great of a year. But still, he's getting the volume, getting the production. Overall, still the wide receiver 3 for me. AJ is super close. I've never been huge on AJ up until this year. And this year I have just loved him. He's been dominant, and he has a number 1 schedule remaining, including an A-plus matchup this week. He would be my overall wide receiver 1 for week 9. So love him going forward. Wide receiver 2 so far. Similar as Chase, wide receiver 33 in volume, but he's a guy that gets the deep balls, gets the yards after catch, gets the touchdowns. He'll be fine on that lower volume, even if it stays around that level. Tyreek, kind of similar to Achane. If Tua stays healthy and Tyreek stays healthy, you guaranteed that he might be my wide receiver 1 overall. He's incredible going forward. Not too worried about it outside of just Tua if he got injured again. Nico, the Diggs injury definitely helps. Obviously, he's been incredible outside of that. Wide receiver 7 volume is ridiculous compared to last year. He was around 30th, and now he's top 10, wide receiver 1 overall. Great schedule going forward. The volume is really only getting better, you would think. And Stroud hasn't even played that amazing, and he's the wide receiver 1 overall. Obviously, just lower because of injury. Puka, I've always been obsessed with. He's my dynasty sweetheart. I got him for free last year. The best dynasty move I've ever made in my life. So love him overall. Could very well have him a lot higher. It is a little different just because we haven't seen too much of him this year. The injury, Cooper Kupp is back, so there's a little more unknown. But in terms of skill, talent, the offense, super confident there. I do have him above Cooper Kupp, and I'm very confident in that. There is one guy on this entire sheet, all 4 positions, that is bright green on all 4, and that is Malik Nabers. Wide receiver 6 overall, wide receiver 2 in volume, 5th schedule the rest of the year, and number 3 in the playoffs. He is number 1 in first read target share, so Daniel Jones does suck, but makes up for it there. Obviously, the offense hurts him. Last 2 weeks, we've seen that, but he's still going to be completely fine going forward. Debo, I talked about it a lot. Same with like Brock Purdy. I'll talk about Ricky Pearsall later. But with no Brandon Ayuk, that volume bump is just massive for him. He's played 3 games without Ayuk now since he got drafted. 25 points, 24 points, and he had 12 last week, but he probably could have had 30. Like, he had a massive touchdown called back. He had a couple other ones that could have gone for big gains. It didn't happen. Penalty, illegal shit, whatever it was. He got a little unlucky. He is still a wide receiver 1 for me the rest of the season. As long as he's healthy, Brock Purdy, I'm confident in him. And in terms of downfield passing, I know, again, CMC hasn't been there, but the 49ers have been throwing downfield a ton. I think most in the league, if not second to the Cowboys. Cooper Kupp at number 10. He is the clear number 2 in LA, in my opinion. I'm sorry. Still amazing, but number 2 in LA. Volume, a little less valuable per target compared to Puka. Puka is more that red zone threat. He's more that downfield threat. But still, obviously, Cooper Kupp amazing. If he stays healthy, he's going to be great there in general. And number 11, in this group 11 that I talked about, DK Metcalf. When he's healthy again, obviously, I think the current wide receiver 16 of where he's at right now is his absolute floor. He is the number 1 guy still. I said it last week maybe, but still number 1 guy, obvious regression candidate in terms of positive regression, going back to that mean, up to that mean. He's wide receiver 6 in volume. He is number 1 every single year in like end zone targets, red zone targets, that sort of work. And now Seattle's passing more than anybody. Still a good quarterback. I love him rest of the season. I'm confident with him at wide receiver 11. Not the greatest schedule, but I think better days are ahead for DK Metcalf. Going into this next group now. Drake London is my wide receiver 12. A huge ceiling, especially weekly. Kirk spreads it around a little. It's not Justin Jefferson. That's not Drake London's role, but still great. The big days are worth the little bit of inconsistency. Amon-Ra, I have London above him just because Amon, the volume hasn't really been there fully. He's been super efficient this year. He's been scoring a decent amount of touchdowns. He's involved in the passing game, and what I mean by that is he's throwing. But no JMO helps. Outside of that, though, the volume is a little bit scary. He's still safe. He's still fine. He's not Laporta or anything, but I don't think he's a wide receiver 1 out of the guys that I would draft for the rest of the season. Still great, though. Garrett Wilson at 14. He really hasn't changed too much since Adams. The reason I have him at 14 isn't because Devontae Adams is there. It's mainly like I was talking about with Brees. Like, the Jets suck. They're 2-6. So it's just tough that way. If anyone, like, Adams is the guy that's probably going to, like, rest late. I don't know what I'm saying. But, like, Rodgers and Adams are the guys that you'd expect to, like, you know, not play as much at the end of the season. Like, Wilson's 25. Like, I think even if they're 2-14, he's still playing. But still, it's a little worrisome there. A guy right after that where it's, like, tempting to put him higher than Wilson, London, Amon-Ra, a lot of these guys, is Thomas Jr. Very well could be higher than this. He has only so far, he's a rookie, only run 73% of the routes, and he is the wide receiver 14. He's wide receiver 37 in volume, and now there's no Christian Kirk. The volume and snaps are only going to increase. Lawrence is second in deep ball throw percentage. Like Thomas fits him extremely well. He has been amazing when he's on the field. Got injured last week, but looks like he's fine. Obviously, Jacksonville's defense isn't good. So, schedule, horrible in the playoffs, but rest of the season, perfectly fine. I really like him. That's a guy that, like, if you told me he was top 5 rest of the season, I wouldn't be shocked. Wouldn't be shocked at all. Terry McLaurin next. Not the greatest schedule. Not the greatest play calling for his situation, but Daniels fits him well. It's one of those weird things where, like, Daniels is a great quarterback fit. The offense really isn't perfect for him in terms of Cliff Kingsbury style, but still has that weekly boom bust. Ever since the start of the year, it was busts early, then a couple boom weeks, and now it's kind of been back and forth, back and forth. I think it's just going to be like that, but still wide receiver 16. Devontae Smith after that, similar to A.J. Brown. Number 1 schedule, that definitely helps. The volume hasn't really been there. I think part of it is just because in that slot role, it doesn't fit Jalen Hurts the best, which is really disappointing. I was really hoping that this would be like the massive Devontae Smith year, and I still think he's fine. Obviously, like wide receiver 17, he's wide receiver 19 right now. But in terms of like being that Keenan Allen, CeeDee Lamb role, like Hurts just doesn't throw over the middle. A lot of it is just like Hurts running and against man coverage throwing to A.J. Brown. So he's still clearly that number 2 in Philly, but really, really good offense. Still like him overall as a solid wide receiver 2 going forward. T. Higgins, the injuries are so freaking annoying. If you want to have him wide receiver 30, I wouldn't even hate it. If you want to have him wide receiver 12, there's a path where it works. Like he's wide receiver 11 when he plays. And I think when he does play, it'll be somewhat similar because of how the Bengals are right now. Like he's played great. Burrow is targeting him often and really valuable targets. It's just the injury concern is just so annoying. So annoying. So annoying. So it's tough to gauge. Hard playoff schedule. Wide receiver 18 right now. I think the guy that maybe on this entire list, quarterback, running back, receiver, tight end, the one that people would disagree with me most is DJ Moore. A guy that I was high on at the start of the season. He hasn't been great, but it is one of those things where he's like the Texans, the 49ers. DJ Moore, every single year, is always above his volume. Always, always, always above his volume because his yards after catch ability, his big play ability, all that sort of stuff. Right now, his volume is wide receiver 15. He is wide receiver 30. Amazing schedule going forward. Improving quarterback play. The play calling isn't amazing. It's really annoying. But I still think there's a shot that he could be that wide receiver 1 the rest of the way. I think if anything, like he's going to be closer to this volume. Like I'm pretty confident, hesitantly confident that he's going to be a top 20 guy. But he does have that ceiling to make up for that bad floor of what he's been around wide receiver 30. So I have hope. I love Caleb Williams. I hate Shane Waldron. It's tough, but I really like DJ Moore still. It's tough. Jaden Reed right behind him. Again, Jordan Love, it's really tough. The volume is shaky. Malik Willis isn't really good for him, obviously. It's insanely high highs and really low lows. You just got to deal with it. We saw another glimpse of Marv last week. And two of the game, like the 2 big blow up games, his 2 touchdowns, 100 yards last week, touchdown, 100 yards. Neither have been like big volume days still. Like it was 8 targets and 7 targets, which if he had that every week, fine, because he can do what he did. But the volume still isn't there, and part of it isn't just because like it's not like he's not commanding volume. It's just that they're not really throwing that much, and there's still just lots of problems there. So, like a lot of these guys, especially in this range, he'll have his big days and he'll have his bust weeks. So it's tough to gauge going forward. Obviously, talked a ton about him and talked a ton about Deontay, so I won't talk too much about those guys. Jalen Waddle, wide receiver 64, and I have him wide receiver 22. I know. At the same time, Tyreek Hill's wide receiver 41. So going forward, Waddle, if you told me he was a wide receiver 1 the rest of the season, again, like some of these guys, like I wouldn't be massively shocked. And it's not even that I'm super confident in him. It's just a lot of these guys right behind him I'm not as confident in. So it's tough to put him too much lower, in my opinion, just because his ceiling is so high when he's on his game. So it's going to take time, I think. We'll see. But He's going to have one of those weeks where he goes off, and I think the perception really changes from that point on. We'll see how it works out. Obviously, I'm a big fan of his, so cautious. Wide receiver 22 for me. Lots of people would have him lower, and that's okay. Amari Cooper, super high ceiling, still like Waddle. Just again, new team. Wasn't getting the targets last week. Low passing volume offense. They run on the goal line a ton. He'd probably be in a better situation in Cleveland, as weird as it sounds, because 2 weeks ago you would never think that, but J-Mos would be incredible for him. Josh Allen, obviously a great quarterback, but now he's finally targeting Shakir and Keon Coleman more and Kincaid, so if they have 3-4 weapons and it's all a mess, maybe he's not the perfect guy. I haven't watched it for 23. Like, that's not low, I would say, but maybe not as perfect as people would hope. Wide receiver 20 in volume, still going to be fine there. Pickens, I think, is that obvious guy where he's wide receiver 37 right now. He's not going to be wide receiver 37 the rest of the way. Like, it's going to be better. I have him at 24. Obviously, very confident that he does get better. He has a great schedule. Russ coming in definitely helps, and he's a good fit at quarterback. I don't know how high he'll get, but the touchdowns will be there. He's gotten pretty unlucky. Lots of pass interference calls against him, that sort of thing. So I think better days are ahead for him. Flowers, I don't think is overly affected by Deontay Johnson. Maybe a little bit worse. It's not a good schedule going forward, but the big thing for him is just it's usually a bad game script, and they're not throwing a ton anyways, so he kind of survives off of that big playability. He gets a lot of that design work. About a quarter of his work is design, so that definitely helps in terms of Deontay Johnson coming in. Ladd McConkey is a guy that in Dynasty I love just because I loved him out of school, and every reason why he's showing, he has been incredible in terms of being an NFL receiver. Fantasy, he's been better. He's wide receiver 25 now, I think, 27 on wide receiver 45 volume. So he's been better. He is number 2 against man coverage behind A.J. Brown in yards per route run. So he's well above his volume. Obviously, Herbert's going to help that. And if his volume keeps increasing, Herbert, then Ladd is going to be that number 1 guy. So could be a really solid wide receiver 2 going forward. If that happens, I do like his potential there. Chargers are just scary. Mike Evans right behind there. Tough to rank him. Injury, like I said, obviously so many of these guys. He's injured, so we'll see how it goes, but no more Godwin. He's going to be low-end wide receiver 1 probably when he's back. Maybe high-end wide receiver 2, but looks really good. We'll see how he comes back from that injury. Josh Downs, and I'll talk about Pittman too just at the same time, because obviously the talk is Flacco versus Richardson. If Richardson comes back, which I think before the season ends, he's going to be starting in some capacity, maybe for one more game and then he gets benched again or whatever it is. But I don't think it's Flacco's job for the rest of the season. But when Flacco is in, both are great. Downs, number 1 in catchable targets per game with Joe Flacco this year. PPR king right there. I think it's 9 catchable targets per game. Like, he's probably going to get at least 8, probably. So 8 points a week just from PPR. Incredible. Pittman, very similar. Not incredible in terms of red zone guy, and still solid though overall. Right after Josh Downs, we got Olave. Of course, better with backups somehow. Carr's going to come back. No Shaheed certainly helps, but still that weekly boom bust guy. Addison, early on, post-injury, the volume hasn't been there, and Hawk is coming back. So the offense is encouraging. That's what I was worried about at the start of the season. Now just the volume really hasn't been there. So that is a little bit worrisome. That's why I have him kind of lower here at wide receiver 30. Honestly, I could put Tank Dell above him. Tank Dell, he's wide receiver 34 in volume, and like I said with a lot of these other guys, last year he was way above his volume, like Nico Collins and C.J. Stroud, because of how efficient that offense was. Now there's no Diggs. For now, there's no Nico Collins. He's got a horrible matchup on Thursday with the Jets, but still, he was top 10 in points per target last year. And in his last month, where he was healthy, 23 points per game with Nico Collins. So I really think the upside is there for Tank. People have been waiting a long time. The 4th best schedule rest of the season, and that counts the Jets this week. So after that Jets game, probably the number 1 schedule, I would guess off the top of my head. So Tank Dell, I actually do like him a decent bit going forward. Mooney is hard to judge because great passing offense. He has a lot of touchdowns right now. In the 5 games that he doesn't have a touchdown, he has one of those above 10 fantasy points. So that's the worry there. The volume, great. Scoring, wide receiver 2. But if he's not getting in the end zone, you're just not having a good day. So that's the tough part. Devontae Adams, worrisome again. The volume since the trade happened. Las Vegas, it was okay volume. It was actually pretty good volume, but it's obviously a horrible efficiency. Going to the Jets, it's like, all right, he's got that chemistry with Rodgers. He's obviously going to be that guy, get 9 targets a game. It's only been 2 weeks, but he's run the routes. The routes aren't the problem. So he's on the field running the routes. Volume, wide receiver 41 in those 2 weeks. And again, I'll say it, the Jets are horrible. They're 2-6. That's another problem there. So Devontae, my wide receiver 33 right now, does have a really good playoff schedule if they manage to, still be trying pretty hard at that point. Hopkins, the problem for me is I don't think he's going to move it in the slot. And I've talked about that a little bit. That was the goal. And just with how Kansas City plays, if Hopkins is just an outside receiver in this offense, I don't think he's going to be that great. So that's the big problem. Worthy, too, wasn't really even playing in the slot last week. Like, both of them were like 20% of their routes, I think, in the slot. Like, that's not going to cut it. 15% even. So that's the problem right now. I think it's going to be solid for Kelsey, and that's about it. Tillman has a horrible schedule, which sucks because I love him. It sucks. Wide receiver 81, I have him at wide receiver 37 rest of the season for obvious reasons. His name is Jameis Winston. But hardest schedule remaining, similar for Elijah Moore. Sutton is going to get better, I think, just with his volume. The volume at the beginning meant next to nothing because Nix was playing so bad. But now he's been playing better. So as that volume slowly starts equaling out with better downfield passing play, Nix is actually throwing downfield a lot more than people would think, at least this past month. Everyone was thinking like check down king, and he is that to a decent amount. But he does also have a lot of deep ball targets, so that's been good. His air yards per target, actually up there. JSN, definitely going to improve closer to that volume, but still not a red zone guy, especially with DK there because DK is always the number 1 guy in the NFL for that. So that really hurts him there. Worthy, similar to Hopkins, less slot work. Ridley, amazing schedule, sucks at football. Pearsall could be that guy, super efficient offense, like I always talk about with 49ers. If he gets 6 targets, he could be wide receiver 2 for fantasy. 6 targets. We just don't know. First round pick, they obviously want to use him. He also got shot, slow getting back to the NFL. So, kind of a toss-up, but if you're looking for a flyer, that's a guy that could be really good going forward. Not the most amazing schedule, but that's okay. Shakir's volume right now is so low. And I'm a big Shakir fan, but in terms of fantasy rest of the season, I'm not super confident. Like right now, people will see I've been wide receiver 45, and he's wide receiver 29 right now. And it's one of those things where rankings are not a guess of points per game ranking at the end of the season. Like, I don't think Shakir will be the wide receiver 45 in points per game. I just think he's the 45th guy that I would like to own because of the lack of ceiling. And my point is, he's wide receiver 67 in volume right now. He has 38 targets this season. 38. 36 have been catchable. 36 out of 38. He has caught 36. So he is basically at the absolute peak. Absolute peak. Now Amari Cooper comes in, and he is wide receiver 29. So, like, is he really going to be better than wide receiver 30? And do you really want a guy that, like, his peak is wide receiver 30? He could be, like, volume could increase, could be scoring more touchdowns, something, but the odds of it happening, that's the thing where it kind of sucks for him right now. In tight ends, it won't take too long. There's not much to talk about. There's only like 5 that are good. But George Kittle, it's pretty hard to say otherwise of him being the tight end 1. I've said it before, but last year, if he had 1 more target per game, 1 more, he would be the tight end 1 in fantasy. And now Ayuk is gone. That probably equals 1 more target per game. And he's already the tight end 1. And he has the number 1 schedule. Tight end schedules don't matter as much, but number 1, that's when it matters a little bit more. So Kittle, incredible. He's so efficient. The yards after catch, touchdowns, everything. It's hard not to like. Bowers, right behind him at number 2. My little sweetheart, leads the NFL in receptions. Gosh, I really love him. Target share is worse with Myers when he is back and healthy. So it's not horrible because Bowers could get 5 targets per game and still be a startable tight end. He's going to get more than that. But in terms of his catch rate, his yak, like he's so good. I won't say because Kittle. He literally might be the best NFL tight end right now. He might be. Has a chance. He's close to Kittle. He's close. So, Trey McBride after that. Second most targets. Third in points. Guess how many receiving touchdowns he has? 0. He's the tight end 3, and he hasn't scored a touchdown yet. 0. And he's the second best schedule remaining. My tight end 3. Kelsey right behind him at tight end 4. Since the Rice injury, third in volume, the tight end 2 overall. He's been amazing since that injury, and he's going to continue to be that focus because that passing attack is just so much in that middle of the field in that slot, and without Rice there, like Kelsey is that guy. They don't have a slot replacement yet that has been confident in. Number 5, David Njoku. Last year, he had 5 games with Joe Flacco, aka 5 games without Deshaun Watson, and he scored 18 points per game. He had 1 game this week without Deshaun Watson, and he scored 17 points. The targets are there, the end zone work is there, the air yards are there, the efficiency is there. Everything is there. Everything is there. If he finished as a tight end 1 the rest of the way, I wouldn't be shocked. I say that a lot about a lot of the guys, but it's just the way that I put it. Ingram at number 6. This is kind of the big fall off for me. There's a clear 5. Clear 5. 6, Ingram, I like better than most at this point. I'm actually usually an Ingram hater, but no Christian Kirk. That's a big thing. Ingram, like I said with Kittle, yes, he's 32nd in schedule. It doesn't matter as much for tight ends just because it is so variable. Like, it is adjusted toward the tight ends that they're playing, but still, like, there's only like 10 good tight ends in the league, so a lot of them are really hard to justify in terms of looking at their matchups. But Ingram, 32nd schedule, but it is highly correlated with Kirk's targets because a slot receiver and a tight end like Rashee Rice and Kelsey, like that same thing. Kirk goes down. Ingram is the one that most benefits from that, and he's a volume guy. Like, he is not going to be an amazing tight end because of his red zone work and his touchdowns. He's a really good tight end because of his targets and receptions. So that's why I have Ingram at 6. Pitts at 7. I'm fine with putting him at 6. He's the tight end 5 right now, tight end 14 in volume. His volume has been increasing. Pitts is just, it's so weird. He started off, I liked him at the start of the year, and then he started horrible, and the advanced analytics, usually when it's extreme, like that's what I care about in terms of the analytics stuff, is like, when is it extreme? Because usually when it's extreme, it doesn't shift back. And Pitts was last in tight ends, receivers, anything, in like separation and win rate and all that sort of stuff. And I don't know if he was like partially injured. I don't know if it was new offense and they're using him in different ways. Like, that's my best guess. But since then, since week 5, second half of the season, 7th in separation, 3rd in yards per route run. Analytics have been great. Scoring has been great. He's definitely been big play reliant. Like, that's kind of why I have Ingram above him. But also, like, the big plays aren't accidental. Like, it's a really good passing attack with Kirk Cousins, and Kirk Cousins throws the most downfield targets to tight ends basically since he's been in Washington. So Pitts, it's not a fluke that way, I don't think. I don't think he's going to be a top 5 tight end, but I think he's going to be between that 6 and 10 range. Jake Ferguson, 8th, mini Trey McBride. He's the tight end 12 right now. He has yet to have a touchdown. Last year, with more competition, he had 8 touchdowns. 8 touchdowns. I think he's played 6 games this year, and he has 0. The 5th best volume. He's a red zone threat, and I know I'm a broken record when I'm saying it, but like, the touchdowns are coming. The touchdowns are coming. What it's worth, week 9 last year was his big blow-up game, and then the rest of the season he was amazing. So his volume is tight end 5. I think he will be closer to that. I have him and Pitts and Ingram all could be interchangeable at that tight end 6 spot. I still like Jake Ferguson. Tucker Kraft at 9 is really tough. He is incredible at the big plays. He is one of those guys who is an insanely good NFL tight end, I think, compared to what the media or everyone, perception, that sort of thing. Fantasy, it's tougher because he's not getting the volume. 1, he needs love. That's for sure. And 2, the receivers they've got 4 other guys that they throw to pretty decently. He only has like a 15-ish% target share. He just gets those big plays. Like, he's really good in yards after catch, really good in those big plays. He's scored a lot of touchdowns so far. So tight end 21 in volume. He's not going to be tight end 21, but is he going to be tight end 6 going forward? I don't think so. Really like him, but it's just tough in the situation that he's in. Dalton Kincaid, a guy that is kind of sadly disappointed me. He is tight end 10 in volume now. His volume has been increasing. He does play a little bit more as like that slot guy. He's not really as much of a red zone threat as much as I would like, at least, especially Josh Allen, James Cook, running a bunch on the goal line. But since he's been in the league, he's never really been that big time red zone threat in terms of the targets. He's more similar to an Evan Ingram. So, getting better volume, still solid. I think he'll be basically at where his volume is, tight end 10. Tight end 10. Andrews, probably the hardest guy to rank. I talked about it this week. Still not great volume, but the efficiency's back. Do his routes, his targets, everything like that increase? I don't think he's had a game over 5 targets. Like, that's not good. It's not sustainable to be scoring like he has in this past month. So I think he's solid. Do I think he's going to be top 3? No. Pretty solid. Cade Otton, until Mike Evans is back, is great. Super valuable up until that point. Don't know after that. He's been getting better and better. He's that second-year tight end, so could have that late season breakout. He's had really only those games where he gets like 10 targets and is great, and then he'll go back to 2 or 3 targets the next week. So it's kind of tougher, but still solid in my tight end 1 range. Hawkinson right behind that. Obviously tough to judge. Could be nothing this year. Could be top 5. Better than Laporta, at least, in terms of my rankings. He is 28th in volume. It's just tough to trust when you're 28th in volume. So yes, JMO's out for now. That helped him last week. But does he go from 28th in volume to 10th without JMO? I don't think so. Great offense, but he's just not getting the work right now. And I don't think out of the guys that could be getting more work, Amon-Ra, Gibbs in the passing game, I don't think it's going to be Laporta that gets that bump. So it's really tough for me going forward. The guys after that, it's tougher to have any sort of tight end 1 confidence. A lot of other weapons for guys like Cole Kmet and Goddard and Schultz. After that, it's a little murkier. Some guys that I've hope I put up to 23 because that's the kind of guys that I could see being solid. If there's someone on this list, I'm sorry. Maybe I forgot them, but most likely I just don't think I have much hope in them. But thank you guys for watching. Longest video yet, I think. So appreciate it. Share with anyone that's not in your leagues, and I'll see you guys soon.